Okay, we have one question online. Someone is saying, what elements of ruling by the Sharia makes a person kafir, or just by not ruling by one makes him kafir?
Okay, so what makes ruling by other than Islam, what makes that ruler kafir, or is it just if he doesn't rule by Islam? So there's two types of what we say not ruling by what Allah revealed. One is when somebody is neglecting some of the laws or the Sharia of Allah, okay, or even all of them. Okay, so he says this is the law of Allah. We will judge and rule by whatever Allah revealed. However, in his kingdom people stole, but he never cut anybody's hand. But he said anybody who steals, we will cut their hand. People drank, and he said whoever drinks, we will lash them 40 lashes. That is the hukm of Allah. But people drank and he never lashed anybody. Okay, he says if anybody commits adultery, married adulterer, he will be stoned to death. But he never stoned anybody to death. Okay, whoever committed adultery, he ignored them. He never stoned them. Or he said we will lash the fornicator, the unmarried fornicator, 100 lashes, but nobody was ever lashed in his time. Okay, he never implemented any of those rules on the people, but he said this is the hukm of Allah that we will rule by. And as well, he said that alcohol is haram and interest is haram, and anybody we catch, we will punish them. But he never actually punished anybody. And people used to deal with interest, but he never punished anybody. And he said, for example, as well, that we will collect the zakat, is obliged upon us, everybody must pay the zakat, and whoever doesn't pay it will be punished. But he never collected the zakat, he never punished anybody. All of these are forms of somebody neglecting, or he did not rule by what Allah revealed. And that is kufr duna kufr, is a sin. It will not make him a kafir. Okay, it will not make him a kafir unless he made it halal in his heart. But we're not going to talk about this. Okay, we judge the apparent. He's Muslim, but he's a sinner. That does not make him kafir. And then there's somebody who says that no, in my kingdom we will rule by the British law instead of the law of Allah. And the British law says that alcohol is not even a crime. So I will not allow anybody in my kingdom to punish the one who drinks alcohol. No court should ever lash the one who drinks 40 lashes. Not allowed in my kingdom. They must allow the people. And in fact, anybody who punishes the drunkard, he will be punished for daring to implement the Sharia of Allah. Or he says that we will not punish the adulterer because adultery is not a crime. Okay, or he says that the one who steals, we will not implement the hukm of Allah of cutting his hand. Instead, we will implement the hukm of the British and punish, because that is the law in our kingdom. That person has replaced the law of Allah and is committed kufr akbar. He's left the fold of Islam. Okay, so now we're saying we're talking about. I'll give you another scenario. Okay, as well, because somebody could say, well, what if he just did it out of hawa? Now what does that mean exactly, out of hawa, out of desires? Meaning that, for example, he says, look, the punishment for the thief is to cut his hand. Okay, the punishment for the thief is to cut his hand. And so somebody came forward and he stole and said, I will cut his hand, and I don't like this man, I will spit on his face as well, and I will kick him as well, and I will lash him. And he did all this. This is oppression. This is the oppression. He hasn't changed the ruling. He said the punishment is to cut his hand. But he's added extra because of his anger, because of his desires, because of his own hatred for the person and grudges. That is not the same as changing the law of Allah, because he admits the hukum, the law, is to cut his hand. What we have today, brothers, is rulers who they do not say the law is for Allah at all. They say it doesn't matter what the law says. Some of them even say, like, we don't want the law of Allah. You remember Mursi, what he said? He said, we don't want dawla diniya, we don't want a state based upon the deen. Pakistan, when they came to power, they said, we don't want a Sharia state, we don't want an Islamic state, we want to have a secular state like Turkey. Do you understand? They were talking about people openly declaring, we do not want the Sharia. They're turning their back on the Sharia. They're preferring the man-made laws over. And they all signed the UN Charter, which says what? That the law of the United Nations has jurisdiction above the law of Allah. They said that whatever the United Nations decides, that is the decision above any other law, including the law of Allah, including the local law, anything. That is clear kufr and putting the people as legislators instead of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the difference between the two. Okay, so I hope this is clear, inshallah.